So Donald Trump spent the weekend adding to his expansive vision of America. He's already claimed that Canada, a sovereign country with roughly 41 million people, is America's 51st state, which came as a stunning surprise to Canadians, border agents, and the rest of the world. He went on to troll Canada by posting a picture of himself staring out at a Swiss mountain with a Canadian flag. Confusing, yes, I know. And on Sunday, he threatened to take the Panama Canal, which the United States built but relinquished control of in 1999. Naturally, Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino didn't love the idea, responding that, quote, every square meter of the canal belongs to Panama and will continue to. But Trump fired back on his social media site. We'll see about that. Then there's his dream of owning Greenland, which he resurrected when he announced his new ambassador to Denmark, Ken Howery, another billionaire Peter Thiel, Elon Musk buddy, writing, for purposes of national security and freedom throughout the world, the United States of America feels that the ownership and control of Greenland is an absolute necessity. Yep, he said it was a necessity. Greenland gained home rule from Denmark in 1979, and its head of government dismissed Trump's calls as meaningless. It's unclear how Trump plans to acquire these sovereign nations, and if that includes the use of American military force. But Rolling Stone reported that a senior Trump transition member said that there's a debate about how much should we invade Mexico. And another source told the magazine that a soft invasion would involve American special forces assassinating cartel leaders in Mexico. Joining me now is Basil Smykel, Democratic strategist and MSNBC political analyst, Rick Wilson, former Republican strategist who co-founded the Lincoln Project, and Ferdinand Demandi, Democratic pollster and MSNBC political analyst. Three of some of my favorite people. I mean, guys. Basil, let's start with you. It's a very Putin-esque thing to make these grandiose claims. How does this even happen, though, realistically and logistically, without Trump deploying use of force?
Well, not being a military expert, I don't know, except to say that, yeah, I would imagine that troops have to be involved. I mean, this is imperialistic language. You know, when he says we need this, that it is part of our desire for stronger national security. Look, Greenland is very rich in natural resources, and he, I'm sure, has his eye on that, and other people have said that. But the language is also disturbing. It's not just him, trying to put world leaders on watch, by using this tough talk and using it as sort of a negotiation tactic. It's scary language because as many folks believe that this country is headed toward oligarchical rule, and given the Putin-esque sort of language that's being used here, one wonders, really, how far actually would he go? I mean, if you really are paying attention to some of what America's policy is, you could see some of what America's treatment of Puerto Rico as being able to shed light on what it is possible. But, he would say, my guess is that it's a way to leverage America's power among world leaders. But given his relationship with Putin, it is really scary stuff, actually.
I mean, Rick, one of the people we know, Miles Taylor, said that in the first Trump administration, Trump asked him and other officials in 2018 whether the United States could swap Greenland for Puerto Rico because, in Trump's words, quote, Puerto Rico was dirty and the people were poor. Yeah. Remember, first term insanity, but some guardrails, less loyalists. Second term, no guardrails, all loyalists. And now we have them talking about assassinating cartel leaders in Mexico to be able to do a soft invasion of Mexico.
First off, Katie, I'm sure that in all these countries, we will be greeted as liberators. It's going to be a great, great American success story. Trying to invade northern Mexico sounds to me like, Vietnam with spicier food. This is a bad plan across the board. But I think in some ways, this really points to the unseriousness of the Trump administration and of Trump's allies. If their claim during the campaign was that our biggest international competitor is China, we're pushing other countries into the hands of China by doing this kind of ridiculous and absurd and overreaching set of posturing that will not happen. Trump likes to flood the zone with what, but this idea that we're going to invade Canada or invade Mexico or seize the Panama Canal, none of it is serious. None of this is a serious proposition, but it is a dangerous one because it shows that Trump thinks that all the alliances and the friendships and the economic relationships that we have with these nations, and Mexico and Canada, biggest trading partners, are there to just be toyed with, and it's an insulting and foolish behavior. But I'm not surprised.
Ferdinand, Trump may have these very grandiose visions to expand the size of America, but he's also on a domestic front still going after woke, the war on woke, which he did again this weekend when he announced that he would stop transgender lunacy, as he calls it, and make two genders the official U.S. policy. Take a quick listen.
Under the Trump administration, it will be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Okay, Fernand, but the eggs. What about the eggs?
Well, eggs, the price of eggs and home ownership and the economy was a distant fifth in the campaign polling I did, Katie, where seizing the Panama Canal was number one, invading Mexico was number two, invading Canada was number three. Seriously. But, I think Rick said something that I really want to highlight here. He talked about how this isn't necessarily serious, but it's dangerous. I think it is serious. I think it's also extraordinarily dangerous because, as we've talked about, there are no guardrails anymore. And for the world's largest and only superpower to be engaged in this kind of bellicose talk directed at our allies, mind you, not even at our hostile enemies, so to speak, at our allies, you have heads of state around the world saying, oh my God, what is going to happen? This is the consequence of this election. And the framing device that I do to understand this bonkers talk is simply to imagine what would happen and how would the actions be if Vladimir Putin managed to be in charge of foreign policy for the United States. And that's how all of this stuff makes sense. Attacks on our allies, undermining America's stability, undermining our moral authority, engaging in this woke-based stroking politics, and not focusing on the issues that the American people said they voted for Trump for, which again was the economy and trying to contain some of the issues at the border. Instead, this talk speaks to what we have, which is a fascist dictator on our hands. By the way, he promised to be one on day one, which is now 30 days away.